Hello everyone, welcome to FISC, Financial Strategy Consultants. Today we are going to study about CFA Level 3 Reading Number 7 LOS1, where we will study in detail about what is the difference between traditional and behavioral finance. So when we look at traditional and behavioral finance, traditional finance is how individuals should behave, whereas behavioral finance explains how individuals actually behave. So it is not only related to a capital market or stocks investment, but even actual in reality, real world, how they should behave. So when we look at traditional finance, person is rational, an investor is rational, he is risk averse, and he has the ability to maximize his utility, and he is very selfish in it. So it doesn't matter to him that whether anybody else is getting benefit or loss from his decision. He just look at his utility maximizations. Therefore, such type of person based which is following all the rules of traditional finance is called a rational economic man. And a rational economic man explains such concepts like a very efficient market. So if there is everyone in the market which is a rational economic man, then market will give you a correct price based on all available information. There is no material non-public information available. The price will tell everything in the market. He also concerned with normative analysis. He used practical rational solutions to find solutions for problems. And he also used prescriptive analysis to look for practical tools and methods to find those rational solutions. So these are the things which defines a rational economic man. Now, if we look at behavioral finance, then behavioral finance is a study which is very new and very evolving study, very evolving topic. It is not there 50 years ago. It is a very new topic. But what is the need of it? So the traditional finance don't explain you how actual market is working. How actual market is not strong form efficient. As we all know that it's actual market many times show you something which is completely different from what it should be based on your knowledge, based on all the information about particular stock or overall market you have, overall economy you have. So traditional finance is missing something, and that missing link is something which we wanted to understand. So we use as human psychology, we use as adaptive and neuroeconomics to understand what is actually happening in the market and what is actually happening within an individual. So he is making suboptimal decisions, and that's why a new form of study come, a new form of finance is evolved, which is called behavioral finance. So what behavioral finance actually do is it recognizes that there could be errors in human judgment, and there could be some biases he have based on the information provided to him or based on the limited information he already have. So these biases, these errors are divided in cognitive errors and emotional biases. These will we will discuss in detail later. So based on these biases and errors, a human, actual human, the real world human is different from traditional finance rational economic man because he is not rational. He is suboptimal from rational. He is not risk averse always. He may be risk averse, but he may not be. And he is selfish, but he may not be selfish. So, for example, in some cases, suppose there is a stock on liquor, there is a stock on something which is causing global warming. So you know that it's undervalued, you know that it is going to give you more money, but still you don't invest in it because you don't want that business to grow for the greater good of people. So that's something which makes a real human different from rational economic man. Now when we look at behavioral finance, there are two sides of it. One is macroeconomic behavioral finance, other is microeconomic behavioral finance. Macroeconomic behavioral finance deals with how actually market is behaving because of all these real humans. So the differences you see in the market, the bubbles you see which are created because of the collective decisions of human is what macroeconomic behavioral finance deals. And microeconomic behavioral finance is something where an individual portfolio manager goes and try to solve the errors in judgment, the biases an individual investor has. So that's called microeconomic behavioral finance. Now there is a difference. Now there is this difference which we have already discussed, that a real human is different from a rational economic man of traditional finance. So Rafa gives some framework to deal with it to every portfolio manager or every individual for himself. First is that you do a normative analysis where you look for the optimal rational solutions, what a rational economic man would do in his theories, in his decisions. Then you do a descriptive analysis where you focus on how individuals are actually working, how they are actually making their decisions. So this way you can get the gaps between real human and rational economic man. And then you will use prescriptive analysis where you will find some tools, some advice by which you can reduce that gap between rational economic man and real human. So that's where prescriptive analysis comes. Now when we go back to the traditional finance, there is a theory called utility theory which is given to explain the behavioral of rational economic means. So what they believe in is four axioms. One is completeness. Completeness means that the choices are well defined between an individual. He may prefer A over B, he may prefer B over A, or he can be indifferent between A and B. So suppose A and B are $5 and $10. So if B is $10, he always choose B. If A is $10, he always choose A. And if both are $10, he would be indifferent between them. Now the second thing is transitivity. It means that if A is chosen over B and B is chosen over C, then A will be definitely chosen over C. That means if you believe that $20 is more than $10 and $10 is more than $5, then $20 will definitely be more than $5. The third thing is independence. It means that a small addition of any other particle or any other choice between two already defined choices won't make any change. So if you have A and some part of C is added in it, and you have B and some part of C is added in it as well, the same part, then if you were before choosing A over B, now you will choose A plus XC over B plus XC. Similarly, like if you have $5 and $10 and there is $2 whose 50% is being added to both of them. So $5 plus 1 becomes 6, 10 plus 1 becomes 11, and you will always choose 11. So there is independence in the choices. And the last postulate is continuity, which means that there are continuous indifference curves. There are unbroken indifference curves. That means if there are three choices A, B, and C, and A is the most chosen one, C is the least chosen one, and B is between them, then there will be definitely some combination of A and C which will be equal to B. So if you have $20, $15, and $10, so it means that 50% of 20 and 50% of 10 will definitely give you 15. If 14 comes between them, so there is always some combination which will give a result equal to 14. Now based on this utility theory, we are given Bayes theorem to understand in this topic review. What is Bayes theorem? Bayes theorem is basically a method to see like how you are going to utilize a new information coming when you already have some information. So that's the main reason to understand Bayes theorem in this topic, so that we can understand how rational economic man gives probability estimate to their choices and how they change it when they get some new information. So there are some of the assumptions which Bayes theorem make. The first one is obviously that a rational economic man or a individual always adhere to the axioms of utility theory. That means he is following traditional finance. That means he is basically a rational economic man. The second is he can give probability to any possible event possible. So that means if there is any event possible in this world, he can give that probability, be it 1% or be it 100% or even less than 1%, but he can give a probability. He also has the ability to incorporate new information based on the Bayes formula. So he will always give the probability only based on what Bayes formula want him to give. He won't give anything more or less than that to a particular instance based on the new information coming. And last is that he will always use all the options to maximize his utility based on the available constraints. So these are the things which Bayes theorem assumes. Now we will look at an example to understand this formula PAB equal to PBA divided by P into PA. So you are not able to understand it quite, but now you can understand in this example where we have two boxes. First box has two red balls and three blue balls, whereas second box has four red balls and one blue ball. What happens if I know that I am choosing a ball from box 1? So what is the probability that it would be a red ball? Obviously 40%, because total 5 balls are there and 2 are red. So 2 by 5, 40%. Now what is the probability of choosing box 1? It's 50% because we have two boxes. 1 by 2 is 50%. What is the probability of choosing a red ball? Remember, box is not given here. So choosing the probability of red ball is 60% because we have total 10 balls, 4 blue and 6 red. Now we have these three information. If you go back and look at the formula before, what it means is that if I am given a box 1 and I am choosing probability of a red ball into I am choosing a probability of box 1 divided by I am choosing probability of red ball, it will give me the probability of choosing box 1 given that the ball is red. The ball I have is red, so how I can find that it is given from box 1? What is the probability that it is given from box 1? So Bayes theorem gives you the formula which can calculate it. Now before going to the formula, we can see it here. See, there are 6 red balls and there are 2 red balls in box 1. So how many percentage of chance is there that the red ball I am choosing is from box 1? It is 2 by 6, 33%. If I go by the formula of Bayes theorem, it is coming 33.33%, the same number. So you can understand that logically this sounds very easy, but this becomes more and more complex we have when you have multiple probabilities, and that's when this conditional probability formula become very important to us. We can also look at it as the probability tree. The two boxes we have 50-50% probability. Red ball 40%, blue ball 60% in the first box. Red ball red ball 80%, blue ball 20% in the second one. And the chances of red ball box 1 20%, blue ball box 1 30%, red ball box 2 40%, blue ball box 2 10%. This is what is given to us. So based on these calculations, we can easily find Bayes theorem formula from this deal in an easier manner. Why I'm saying this? See, if you can see here, these P red and box 1. This is the 20% which was the numerator, and 20% plus 40% was the denominator. So this makes it easier to calculate. This makes it easier where we want to calculate probabilities in Bayes theorem. Now moving on, we will study the last topic of this alloys, risk aversion. So we have discussed about risk aversion, that a traditional finance, rational economic man is always a risk averse. But does real man, actual man of human of behavioral finance is also a risk averse? Let's look into it. So what a risk averse investor is? Suppose you have a option to choose between $200 and $100, 50-50 chance. Like 50% chance that you can get $200, but there is also 50% chance that you can get only $100. And from that, there is also another option where you can definitely take $150 with you. You don't need to go for this probability. What risk averse investor is doing is that he doesn't want to take a risk of losing the $50 from 150, because he thinks that the loss of $50 when he is going to get $100 is much more than the gain he is going to get in the $200, even though the difference between 150 and 200 is $50 only. So the gain and the loss in terms of profit and loss is same, but in his mind he always feel that a sure shot is much better than a probability. It's not something like 99 or 1%. It's like when two things are equal, but one is probable and one is sure shot. So he would go for probability, he will go for short shot. So for him, the 200 or 100 option is weaker than the $150 option. That's what a risk averse investor do. What a risk seeking investor do is he want to take more and more risk. So for him, this 200 or 100 is much more than $150. Now a rational person, a rational economic man won't do this. This doesn't sound logical to him. But in real world, we can see such examples. Just like lottery tickets, you can always go for higher amount, even though the probability is hardly 1%, and you are paying the fixed cost, the ticket price, which is a sure shot would have used in something else. So this is what is the behavior of a risk-seeking investor, which we can see in the real world. And then there comes risk-neutral investor, which doesn't find it any difference between 200 or 100 and 150. And this kind of person will always be there in the real world, not maybe in monetary terms, but in a lot of terms. Now, based on this, we have created a utility function for all these type of individuals. So, what traditional finance believe is that the people follow diminishing marginal utility. They believe the normal microeconomic, and that's why their utility reduces with increase in the wealth. So, as the wealth increase, suppose you have 1000, it's very valuable to you. If you have 2000, the value decreases and it continues to decrease with the wealth increase, whereas a risk neutral doesn't have any difference. So for each $100 added, he is going to have same increase in his utility. And for risk seeking, a small addition would increase it. Another small addition would increase even further, and it goes on. So the utility increases faster than the wealth. But what happens in reality? Reality doesn't go for laws of diminishing marginal utility. You already know that the value of money won't reduce for you at any moment of time. Go and look at the richest man of the world. He also always wanted to gain more and more. And look at the poor. He also want to do the same. And the middle class. So everyone in this world want to get more and more money. So he is not having any diminishing marginal utility for wealth. So that postulate is not correct. There is definitely some examples where this law follows. For example, like eating food. You will eat complete food once. But after that, the utility of those food, if you are getting more and more, won't matter to you because you can't eat them. So that's what we have to understand. So there are different phases where he could be risk seeking, he could be risk averse, and he could be risk neutral. So that's what we had to study in this topic. Please subscribe this channel and share with as many people as you can. Please comment to let me know how I can improve this video, and please follow and subscribe this channel to get the latest update on new videos on this topic. Thank you very much.